GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
Hey, everybody. This is Lauren Marie Taylor from Friday the 13th, Part 2, wishing you a happy Halloween. You are listening to the All Bets Are Off podcast with my man crush, Robbie Vegas.
What's up, rock soldiers? This is the rockstar Robbie Vegas coming at you with another episode of the All Bets Are Off podcast, and today we have Nathan Baesel on the show. You may know Nathan as the man behind the mask. I'm talking about The Rise of Leslie Vernon. This is a horror comedy mockumentary that is now a cult classic in the horror community and very popular also, so I won't waste any more time. We will have Nathan on the phone here in just a second, but before we do, I want you guys to check out my Pro Wrestling Tees store at prowrestlingtees.com/rockstarrobbievegas, and we have a bunch of designs on there, including some for this podcast, so if you like what you're listening to, you can go on there and grab an ABAO Pod t-shirt with our logo on it. There's also wrestling shirts, music shirts, we got it all, and of course it helps me greatly, so I appreciate you guys very much for listening, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast and go on and give us a 5-star rating and a review. Those always help us out, push us to the top of the list when people are looking for a new podcast to check out, so we appreciate those as well. And one last plug before I get Nathan on the phone is unchainedmuscle.uk. Use code RVegas20 at checkout to save 20% on your gym apparel, and they also have whey protein coming soon, so make sure you check that out. They're a great company, and they donate to mental health charity if you purchase from that section. So let's get Nathan on the phone and get this interview going.
The boy murdered Silas, buried his body in the field, and dragged Molly from the house, hanging her in the farm's apple orchard.
Cardio I have to do. It's ridiculous. There's that whole thing and making it look like you're walking. And everybody else is running their asses off. Everybody thinks we just wake up one morning and start obsessing about a girl and start stalking her, killing everybody that gets in the way.
That does seem to happen a lot with you guys.
That boy, he's going to be the best guy.
There are 11 exits from the first floor. Another 8 or 9 that might be manageable from the second floor. All the obvious weapons I sabotaged.
Why are you doing this?
We're not going to have this conversation.
Oh, why? What, you
Head in the van.
You have no idea who you're dealing with.
So how will this play out? How will this work?
You won't like what you see. I promise you that.
Make sure you're getting this.
Oh, stop.
What we got filming those cameras, boys?
I cannot stand here and let this happen.
Don't you get it? We're in this now. We're part of his equation.
We're right where he wants us. All of us. You have to tell me.
All right, Nathan, so the first thing I want to do is just thank you for being here. I truly appreciate you being on the show, man.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. Love talking about this movie.
Well, I want to go even farther back than that, and I want to know what age were you when you took interest in acting?
As far back as it takes for a kid to realize if you ham it up a little bit, then you make somebody smile or you get a pat on the back, you know? That's as long. It doesn't go very long.
That's cool. So what age were you when you landed your first role?
Professionally, I was after school, and so that was. Oh God, I'm not good with math. That's why I went into acting in the first place. Was because of math. It was always math with everything except for acting. You never had to do math. I was in my 20s, mid-20s, I think. Yeah, I did TV stuff, like 1-hour cop dramas. I was always the bad guy.
Okay. So were you a fan of the horror genre prior to being cast for Behind the Mask?
Yeah, I was. I appreciated it, but mostly from afar because I'm easily frightened. I'm a scaredy cat.
That's kind of crazy to think that you were afraid of them because you end up being the killer.
It's a little ironic. And we like those little twists, don't we?
That's true.
Yeah, well, I'd seen Nightmare on Elm Streets 1 and 2 on a video renting spree one weekend with my siblings. And we squeezed that in between Remo Williams and Condor Man. And that was kind of it. We didn't really watch a whole lot growing up with my all of the movies that we saw were like edited for TV versions. Mm-hmm. So my edited for TV understanding of what Animal House is completely different than the actual movie.
Okay, that's fair enough. So that kind of brings everything full circle then, because when you do Behind the Mask, you end up working with Robert Englund. So what was that experience like?
It was pretty sweet. He's who I had most of my familiarity with to the horror genre. And fortunately, fantastically, I had a great script that kind of laid out mechanics for appreciating horror and specifically slasher that allowed me to get a lot of insight into the movies just from reading the script, Mm-hmm. So it's a lens that I've applied to just about, every horror movie that I've, watched since then. But, so Robert Englund was the slasher villain that I was most familiar with, and here I am doing scenes across from him. It was, pretty awesome, but it was also really rewarding to have his feedback on the set. He was really complimentary, and he just really participated 100%, threw himself in 100% to what we were doing, and we were really fortunate because of that. Not only did he give a great performance, but his involvement with the movie is one that he is proud of and constantly directing people's attention to. So it's pretty fantastic on both counts.
So how did you actually end up being cast for the movie yourself?
Auditioning.
Okay, simple enough. For people who don't know, the movie's like a mockumentary about finding out how these serial slashers work. Michael, Jason, everybody. And you have a very comical view of it at first, but then at the end it switches and you become a very serious slasher. So did you have a hard time switching from the comedy to the slasher, or did that just kind of come natural with the way that the script was written?
I think it's one of the reasons why I auditioned really well was because there's not a whole lot of gap between my, totally manic, I'm, on cloud nine, and my totally manic, I'm going to kill you.
All right, fair enough. You draw inspiration from life. So
life. The people around me are constantly inspiring me.
So I feel like with like a movie like Scream, it brought to light a lot of horror tropes and like how you need to survive a slasher movie. But I feel like with Leslie Vernon, you really nailed down what a final girl is. Has anybody ever given you like the credit for really bringing that to light when it comes to these slasher type movies?
Yeah, well, the concept, she's also called the final girl, has been around for a while, and it's one that has been dealt with to great scholarly extent, and it's one that influenced David Stevie and Scott Glosserman. David Stevie was the writer, Scott Glosserman director, and he contributed to the script, and a lot of what he contributed was his studies from a college class he had on horror, I think it was, and the conventions of horror and whatnot, and so that got plugged into what Stevie had already had in his script, which was a really fun way to look at slashers, and it kind of gave a real intellectual heft to our movie, which was cool because, there's not a whole lot of movies that work like that.
Right, absolutely. I feel like it pulled back the veil just enough, but also reeled you back in at the end there. So do you have like a favorite scene from that movie?
The whole thing is still kind of a blur. I don't know that I've really processed it because we were working so fast and just trying to get so much done in such a short amount of time. So, a night of shooting, we just got so much done that, everything, my whole recollection of it, just everything is smashed together. But a lot of what I'm most fond of is the work that we did that we got a lot done in a very, concentrated amount of time. And we worked very nimbly, and not a whole lot of productions are able to pull that off. But because we got enough coverage to make it work. I mean, there's some holes in our movie, I think if you looked at the script, you'd see that, some of the stuff that had been imagined for it, we just couldn't pull it off in the time or the money restrictions that we had on our resources,
Yeah.
But yeah, for what we set out to do, we got a lot done in a very short amount of time, and that's the stuff that sticks out to me, are those key moments where we were just like against the wall, and we just got to get it done. Sun's coming up. I mean, what are you going to do? We cannot shoot, after 45 minutes from now, so we got to get it done. Just gotta.
Right. This movie seems to gain steam more and more every year that passes, and it became such a beloved movie in the horror community. So in your opinion, why do you think that it just keeps growing in popularity more and more?
I think because of its obscurity, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Not a whole lot of people know about it, and we didn't make a big splash when we did our national. What do you call it when you're in the theaters? We were in theaters across the country maybe 5 days. I'd be surprised if we got a week.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we got a lot of internet buzz, but it didn't translate into awareness and national awareness and money. That's the easiest thing to justify a sequel is making money the first time around, and we didn't really do that. We made a movie that turned out pretty darn good, and we're all really proud of it, and it really turns people on. But I think a big part of the reason why it turns people on, it deals with horror conventions, and it puts a really interesting, sometimes funny, sometimes fascinating lens onto things that you see that happen continually in horror movies.
Yeah.
But I think that we were able to do it in such a way that, you know what I mean? It met our, expectations, and it turns people on. But a big part of the reason why it really turns people on is because it's not really well known. And so you got, I think horror fans, they've got this little thing that they can, hold on to, and they can share when they, know somebody and like somebody, and, want to turn on somebody's Saturday night. Hey, here's something that I'm, 99.9% confident is going to, show you a fun night.
Right. And you mentioned the horror conventions and things like that too. So as time goes on and the movie becomes more popular within the horror community, do you find yourself doing more of those?
Yeah, I've done a bunch, and they're great. It's always a great opportunity to meet fans, and I had a couple scheduled for this year that had to get pushed, so I expect to meet those obligations totally. But yeah, I enjoy getting out, and I enjoy meeting folks. I mean, there's a lot of it's pretty wild. I go about my day to day, and I do not get the kind of reception that I get when I'm attending a horror convention.
Do you remember what it was like when you actually watched the movie back for the first time, all put together after filming and the premiere and all that stuff? What was going through your mind when you actually saw it finished?
Well, I'd seen it in stages, and the first time around I watched this screening, I was really surprised and disappointed, because I felt like it wasn't it. Mm. It didn't. I don't know. It's hard to say, but a movie in an editor's hands, it's a completely different movie. It's we had another pass from another editor who had a background in horror and slasher, and he was able to just really make some bits sing that were really necessary to kick up the slasher in our movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to pull off those sequences really well. And so watching that screening, I was like, okay, all right, we got a shot at this. We got a shot.
Okay. So I kind of want to talk to you about also some other projects that you did after this briefly. So in 2007, you actually had a recurring role on Journeyman, which is like a science fiction TV series. Was that another role that you just auditioned for, or was this like specifically reached out to have you on?
No. It was an audition. Yeah. Everything I've ever had was an audition.
Was it different coming off of something like Behind the Mask to go into like a science fiction TV series, or did you always just find things came to you naturally?
Well, no. In fact, before Journeyman, I did a season of Invasion, and that was a sci-fi series for ABC that followed Lost, and that was a really fantastic education in sci-fi, serial sci-fi, you know. Mm-hmm. But so Journeyman came after that.
So in 2008, you did 20 Years After, and that was like a post-apocalyptic movie. So is that still kind of in that same vein of like the science fiction? So you're kind of keeping with what you've already been doing?
Yeah, I think that was probably the first time I had gone on an audition where the casting director had been aware of Behind the Mask.
Oh, okay.
Because like I said, it really didn't, not a whole lot of people had seen it. So, to have a casting director who was already on your side because they knew that you could do solid work was like, oh, great. It won't be as hard a sell, knowing that I've got a friend in my camp.
Right. Did you ever think, because I know a lot of people who do horror movies end up only doing horror movies, were you ever, like, nervous that you would get typecast into only doing that kind of role, or would that be something that you would have welcomed?
Maybe at the time I would have poo-pooed it and said that, I want to have a really diverse career and, whatnot, but I don't think I would turn it down anymore. It's not like the phone isn't ringing off the hook, No, if anybody out there wants to make a horror movie, No, but I walked away from acting for a while, from professional acting anyway, and that was really good for me. It was good for me, and but I'm coming around to feeling like I'm ready to get back out there again, and so I've been kind of testing the water a little more and more.
Mm-hmm. When you say you walked away from like professional acting, were you still doing like types of like Broadway or plays or anything like that, or?
Community theater, I think you'd call it.
Okay.
My city that I live in is Fullerton in Orange County, just a little south of LA, and there's a number of small theaters here where you get an opportunity to do, great roles. Yeah. That you.
Now, was that because you were kind of getting burned out, or was that just something you wanted to do?
It was a money thing. The work was getting really, really tight, and the bills were piling up, and it was just like acting's not making it right now. I got to find something, and I had a 9-to-5 job that was offered to me at the peak of my frustration, and it was the first staff job I ever had, with insurance and all that stuff. But boy, it really it was good to have that stability for a while. I didn't realize how much I really appreciated stability until I experienced it for a while.
Right. Okay. I wanted to ask you also about, in 2009, you did a movie called Off the Ledge, and that was a comedy. And I wanted to know, do you find yourself as a natural comedian? Because as Leslie Vernon, the humor in that was so spot on. And the scene that comes to mind is the cardio scene where you're talking about how you have to look like you're walking when everybody's running. And that scene always cracked me up. So thinking of the movie Off the Ledge, was that, again, just like a natural transition for you?
I don't know if I do stylized comedy. I mean, I could give it a good college try, but I think the kind of form of comedy that I enjoy most and that I think I probably am best at doing is comedy where it's not really behaviors that is funny. People are relatively real. It's just that what they're real about and what they're wired about is just odd, bizarre, Mm-hmm. So it's kind of real people in weird situations is, what I really dig. And so that's what this was very much. Behind the Mask Mask, and Off the Ledge was a different kind of comedy. I think it was kind of darker, but if that's possible, darker than Behind the Mask. But Behind the Mask had a lot of humor to it, and there was some morbidity to it, but it was all in good fun.
Yeah, it was. Now, when you're at these conventions and fans are meeting you, is there like a certain scene that you hear about the most that fans want to talk to you about or point out as their favorite scene?
I get Paradise Lost Found It a lot.
I could see that.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you're afraid of horror movies, but you are a fan of the genre. Now you're a part of it. So what are some of your favorite horror movies to watch around Halloween time since we're getting close?
Well, I always watch the Legend of Sleepy Hollow cartoon and It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Those are my every time movies, but I'll usually do Nightmare Before Christmas. And then as far as horror movies, I only saw Halloween, the first Halloween, for the first time 2 years ago. So
come on, really?
I still have some catching up to do. My Halloween library isn't too full, but Dracula, Frankenstein, those are on every time, every year with Svengoolie, so I catch those movies. Actually, that's most of my horror kind of education to this point has been Svengoolie. Oh,
okay, that's cool. I actually do watch him. He's really entertaining.
Great show. Watched it with my boys. It was their education as well as mine.
I'm just blown away that you just saw Halloween 2 years ago. I'm in shock almost. Leslie Vernon is telling us this on the All Bets Are Off podcast, folks.
Yeah.
So there's always rumors flying around about Behind the Mask 2. Have you ever heard anything about this? Is there any truth to this? Or is that just something that like diehard fans are just very hopeful of?
No, I hear about it all the time. Yeah.
Okay. So is there like some truth to?
I didn't know. Look, we tried to get a sequel off the ground a little while ago. David Stevie came back and wrote a kick-ass script, and we were ready to try to get the ball rolling, and we set up a crowdfunding thing, and we didn't meet our goal. We didn't get the money. It was a substantial amount of money, but we didn't get it, and that was the last real effort that we made at getting a film off the ground. What we did do, however, because the script was so great, and because it should have been a movie anyway, we hired a fantastic artist, Nathan Thomas Milner, who came in and made a comic book of the sequel script.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where can that comic book be found?
I think it's called Vernon's Farmhouse is the website, and it's a 6-issue series called Before the Mask: The Return of Leslie. Before the Mask: The Return of Leslie Vernon. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. I feel like now with Shudder, also it's like breathing new life into Behind the Mask because a lot of people are subscribing through quarantine, and it's almost resurfacing this year because of the pandemic. Oddly enough.
Yeah, I'll bet. I get hit up all the time by people who are just like, "Man, just saw this movie. Can't believe it. I never heard of this. Biggest fan." I
remember I discovered it walking through Blockbuster, and I saw...
Those were the days.
Yeah, right. I saw the cover, and I was like, this looks interesting just based on the cover. And I rented it and was like, that's it. This is one of my favorite movies. So
many people had that experience, and it's a really cool and small community of folks who can say that I walked in the Blockbuster on a Saturday night. I had a night to kill, and I saw the cover, and I thought, I have not heard anything about this. What the hell? And we're not only pleasantly surprised, but in some cases turned on for life.
Oh, for sure. I lost count of how many times I've watched it, so it definitely hit me hard. Last couple things for you before I let you go, but do you have a favorite kill scene?
My favorite, I was talking before about how the difference between the two edits.
Yes.
So we didn't even include in the first edit, we didn't even include a scene where the stoner guy comes into the tool shed and he's looking around, and then he gets the machete in the back of the neck. we didn't even have that in the first edit because the gag just didn't work. We didn't have a whole lot of success with some of our gags. It was just, we were trying to do a lot with a little bit of time and a few resources. You know, our director was just, you know, maxed out, and you know, so we weren't able to execute. And the second editor came in and he pulled all those scraps up off the cutting room floor, and he pieced together something that actually works really well because it ends up, funnily enough, it ends up mirroring even closer those movies that were emulating those late 70s, early 80s slashers, where they didn't have any budget or resources either, and they had to, you know, make it work. And so the quality isn't necessarily 100% all the time, but it's a quality about those practical effects that's, you know, it's special. And even in not executing 100% well, it's special in that as well.
Right. And now, you keep saying that you were on limited time. Do you remember how limited your time was when you were filming that?
That specific gag?
Yeah.
I want to say it would have been probably an hour to 45 minutes at least to set up the shot, the lighting inside, and then we shot him. There were a couple different setups, so I mean the whole thing probably 2 hours.
Oh wow, okay. And the whole movie you said was made like that, which was like pretty just quick because you had to get it done.
Boom, boom, boom.
Wow, that's amazing that it came out as well as it did. If you were that rushed, that's really cool to hear.
It's pretty surprising, and a lot of movies have a lot more resources than we did, and still, you know, have a lot of challenges getting out the gate. So we were pretty fortunate. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, very last thing before I let you go, I kind of just want you to plug, you know, your social media, and I would normally say whatever conventions you have coming up or things like that, but I know that right now that's probably not a thing. But just let people know where they could find you, and again, where they could find the Leslie Vernon comic book and keep up with you and things like that.
Yeah, so Vernon's Farmhouse, Vernon's Farmhouse, I'm thinking that's what it is the site for the comic books. And then I'm on irregularly Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I don't know it's probably N Baesel or something like that. I'm not too clever when it comes to names. Yeah, there's not really a whole lot to plug right now. I am doing I'm doing an online convention in October.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but it's like an outgrowth of Midwest Monster Fest, and it's their kind of digital version of the convention.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that should be cool. And wait a minute. Yeah, well, it just says Midwest Monster Fest.
Oh, okay. Well,
Midwest Monster Fest. Oh no, that's for 2021. Yeah, so I'll be doing that in September 3rd through 5th, 2021. Midwest Monster Fest.
Oh, okay, very cool. So they're already booking them out for next year.
And I'll give you the website for the convention in October.
Okay, perfect. And I will make sure we get that out there when this drops. And dude, thank you so much for doing this. This was really cool. As somebody, like I said, who was just walking through Blockbuster and found a new favorite movie, this is excellent to be able to talk to you.
Right on. Well, it was great talking to you, and have a great rest of your night.
You too. Thank you.
Mr. Vernon, can we throw a mic on you?
Yeah, sure. This is the living room. There's Church and Zoe. Here are my little sweeties. Actually, he's not. Don't put your finger anywhere near him. But you can pet him. He's a sweetie. I'm so terrible with these guys. I go away for days, forget to feed them. Little bastards just won't die.
Turtles are good that way. Very feng shui.
Yeah. Playing some turtles. I only keep pets I can eat.
All right, rockers, so that was Leslie Vernon, Nathan Baesel. I hope you guys check out Behind the Mask if you haven't yet. It really is a great movie. It's funny, it's scary, it's gory, and it's everything that horror fans like. So if this is your first time hearing about it, check it out. It's streaming on Shudder. I'm sure it's streaming on a few other things. And of course, you could buy it on Amazon, etc., etc. So make sure you check that out, and I thank you for listening to the All Bets Are Off podcast, and we will catch you next week.
preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.